everyone, Amelia Mosley here, bringing you this BTN Science Week special. Now, if you're wondering what I'm doing standing in front of a glass house, well, that's because the theme of this year's Science Week is glass. And that's what we're going to explore in today's show. We'll find out how glass has changed the world. Learn about some amazing glass inventions with the help of our rookie reporters. And even see some impressive glass art. But first today, let's go back in time to find out how glass was first discovered and used, and how it's changed life as we know it. Here's Jack.
When it comes to drinking vessels, for me, nothing beats a glass. But have you ever wondered, where does glass come from? Why can I see through it? Is it just hot sand? And why can't I throw stones in glass houses? Well, I've asked a very dear friend of mine to help explain. Ah! Oh, gosh, sorry, you're just so terrifying sometimes. Oh, those eyes.
While we clean up, let's take a look at the long, long history of glass. And I do mean long.
Well, look what I found.
This is obsidian. It's a type of natural glass.
Yeah, no. It appears to have been formed when the molten rock from this volcano cooled rapidly, resulting in this sort of blackish-greenish thing. What do you think?
As the volcano would suggest, one of the main ingredients in making glass is heat. The other is typically, but not always, sand. There are a few other types of naturally occurring glass, like fulgurite, which occurs when sand is hit by lightning, and tektite, which is the result of a meteorite impact. And from what experts can tell, humans have been using these types of glass for hundreds of thousands of years, including Australia's First Nations peoples, who used it as cutting tools, as tips for spears, and for ceremonial purposes. But the first human efforts to make glass, that we know of anyway, happened around 2500 BC, in the ancient region known as Mesopotamia. And some historians reckon it might have happened by accident.
Yeah, so all I did was mix silica sand, lime, and soda. I thought I was making a drink. But instead, no, I was making this, a cup for my drink.
About 1,000 years later, the ancient Egyptians also began creating things out of glass. In particular, they were quite fond of making glass beads.
Yeah, oh, my necklace. Yeah, you noticed that, did you? Yeah, it's glass beads. Yeah. All the rage down at the bazaar. Yeah. I can get you some.
Over the next few hundred years or so, glass making became popular across the Mediterranean, Europe, and into parts of Asia. And around the 1st century BC, the Syrians came up with the technique of glass blowing, which truly changed the game. Glass blowing was later taken by the Romans, who used it along with a sort of pressing technique to create the first glass windows.
Manny! Hi, Manny, can you see me? I can see you.
Yep, there was a time when people didn't have glass windows. Instead, you might just have a hole in your wall, with an animal hide curtain or a window made out of paper. Fancy. By the 1100s, many European cathedrals were being decorated with stained glass windows, coloured with powdered metals mixed into the molten glass.
Oh no! What have you done? All the glass is stained. Oh, I'm just kidding. No, it looks great. Yeah, I love it. Love what you've done.
As the years went on, glass became more and more popular. In the 13th century in northern Italy, the first glasses to enhance eyesight came about.
Wow! Oh, well, I can see everything so much more clearly now. Wait a second. Are you a mannequin?
Then, in the 16th century in Venice, we got our first look at ourselves, thanks to mirrors.
Yeah, that's you. That's what you look like. Not bad, hey?
And in the 17th century, we got telescopes.
Whoa. Yoo-hoo! Manny!
As for the big sheets of glass that are used in buildings pretty much everywhere, well, most of that is thanks to this guy, Henry Bessemer. He was the first to find a way of making glass perfectly flat. Nowadays, we have all sorts of glass for all sorts of purposes. And it's opened up windows, so to speak, into a whole world of inventions and discoveries.
Well, thanks for helping me explain the origins of glass, and I'm sorry about throwing that water on you before. It's just that I got really... Well, I guess we're even.
Do you know the name of the type of glass that's formed by volcanoes? It's obsidian, and it's been used for thousands of years for all sorts of things.
Can you read this? What about now? Well, for millions and millions of people, these humble bits of glass have brought the world into focus. And their story begins more than 800 years ago with this painting. Wait. There we go. This is the earliest known painting of someone wearing glasses. His name is Hugh of Saint-Cher, and he lived in 13th century France. But many people agree that glasses were probably invented in Italy around 1268. Anyway, it wasn't until the printing press came along and people started reading a lot more books, or trying to read them, that glasses became super popular. But how do they actually work? Well, it's all to do with something called refraction, which is the way light bends as it passes through transparent surfaces. When our eye works perfectly, light hits our lens and cornea at the front, and then focuses onto our retina at the back, which sends a nice clear image to our brain. But sometimes our cornea and lens have little imperfections that makes the light focus too close, too far away, or not at all. Glasses work by fixing these mistakes, by adding a bit of, well, glass to shift the light into exactly the right spot on our retina. About 2/3 of Aussies wear some form of glasses, in all sorts of different shapes, sizes and styles, helping us see the world in all its perfectly refracted glory.
Now, one of the really cool things about glass is that it can be reused again and again, and even transformed into something completely different. Let's find out more about glass recycling and how it can help the environment.
Kel, you're right, you seem a bit stressed.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just trying to work out which bin to put my glass bottle in. I mean, it seems like it should be recyclable, but I've just never really thought about if you can recycle glass.
Okay, that sounds like a bit of a you problem. Maybe something you can research yourself.
That's rude.
Gladys was right. It was a me problem, and one that I could research. Turns out you can recycle glass.
In fact, it dates all the way back to ancient Rome.
They produced glass on a massive scale and then broke it down and transported it across the Roman Empire, where it was remelted, reshaped and recycled into all sorts of glassware.
But what about in modern Australia? You know, right now. Do we still recycle glass? And if so, how do we do it? Let's find out.
G'day, Phil. How are you? I'm good, how are you? Not too bad. Can you tell me what you do here?
Well, this is a recycling centre. This is one of 40 in the metropolitan South Australia. We've got 120 of them across the state.
Phil Martin is the Vice President of the Recycling Association of South Australia. And let's just say he can't get enough of glass bottles.
We can't get enough of glass bottles, whether it be beer bottles, wine bottles. Glass is the best thing that can be recycled.
So I've brought my glass bottle in. Should we go see what happens to it?
Why not?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, let me hit you with some recycling facts. Around the globe, around 20% of all glass products come from recycled glass. In Australia, that number is closer to 50%. And that's a good thing, because right now the world is going through a bit of a sand shortage, the main ingredient of glass. See, you can't just use any sand. To make glass, it needs to have a really high amount of the compound silicon dioxide, and that's in high demand. Plus, melting down recycled glass takes far less energy than melting sand from scratch. And that whole recycling process starts right here.
Nice and loud.
Glass gets brought in by the public to depots like this, where it's sorted and then these massive containers are moved across town. That's to places like this one, where it's processed into tiny glass pebbles known as cullets, which can then be melted down and remade into new glass products.
You're looking at around about 14,500 cans in one of those blocks.
Phil says even though recycling cans, plastic and paper is great, these things deteriorate every time you reuse them. But glass doesn't. He says the best place to recycle glass is to take it directly to a depot like this.
Phil, thank you very much. I've learned a lot about recycling glass. Clearly, it's the way to go.
For sure, it just keeps going round and round.
Absolutely, perfect. Well, at least it'll be recycled.
What chemical compound is glass usually made from? Is it silicon dioxide, carbon dioxide, or calcium carbonate? It's silicon dioxide.
For thousands of years, people have stared up at the stars and imagined what was out there. But it wasn't until a few hundred years ago we started to get a glimpse of all the planets and galaxies that fill our universe, and it was all thanks to a few bits of glass. The invention of the telescope is usually credited to Dutch eyeglass maker Hans Lippershey in 1608. Like others before him, he knew that you could make images seem bigger using curved glass and the power of refraction. He used one curved piece at the front of the telescope, which then focused the light down a long tube towards another smaller bit of glass, which enlarges the image for our eye. It was Galileo Galilei in 1609 who realized the telescope's full potential. He pointed it to the sky and for the first time saw mountains and craters on the moon, the rings of Saturn, and 4 of Jupiter's moons. His observation changed our view of the universe forever. Today, most telescopes use a combination of lenses and large mirrors to help us peer into the galaxy and beyond, at exploding stars, faraway planets, and even billions of years into the past, to the very beginning of our existence.
Glass has some really amazing properties that make it useful for all sorts of things, like growing plants or even transmitting information. Kale went along to meet a group of scientists who are using a special type of glass to help them explore the underwater world. Check it out.
Oh, stop it, you Wilson. Kelly? Yes, Captain.
Status report.
Status is good, sir. I had a wonderful sleep, a splendid breakfast, but I must admit I'm missing my family and feeling quite lonely.
The ocean, Kelly. What sort of data are we collecting? What's out there?
Okay, the data, yes. Now would be a good time to tell you we're not actually collecting any data. These are just videos I'm playing from my laptop. But we're having fun. Just me and you on the submarine.
Okay, give me an hour. I'm gonna find an expert. Just give me an hour.
Kale, where are you going? We're underwater, Kale.
Whether you're underwater in a submarine or just sitting at home on your computer, There's a piece of technology we've been using for years to send and receive information in the blink of an eye. These are optic fibres. They work by transmitting information in the form of light along ultra-thin strands of glass. Yeah, that's glass. Most of our telecommunication, TV and internet signals are sent through optic fibre cables that stretch for hundreds and thousands of kilometres underground. In fact, you're probably using them to watch this.
Hey Sinead, how you going?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad, thank you.
I went down to Defence Science Technology Group in Adelaide to learn a little bit more about how they work.
I've got a bit of optic fibre here and some light coming through it, which the camera can see, there you go. But even if I bend it and move it round, the light still comes out the other side. So is that a kind of a good demonstration of how optic fibres work?
Yeah, and the way it works is via a reflection process. So the light is contained within the optical fibre because as it moves through, it just reflects from surface to surface through that glass core all the way until it reaches the other end.
Optical fibres have been around since the 60s. In fact, they were used in the cameras that recorded this.
Oh, it's beautiful, mate, it really is.
But they've come a long way since then.
Like this stuff here.
And scientists like Sinead are still finding new uses for them.
We use them to make something called a fibre optic hydrophone. So that is a type of underwater microphone that we use to listen to different sounds in the ocean. And we put one of these sensors in the ocean and a sound wave comes along and hits the sensor. It will exert a pressure on the device which bends that fibre laser. And when this happens, it sends a signal to us to say, hey, something's making some noise in this area, and then we can try to figure out what it is and where it's coming from. Especially if you're deep in the ocean, it's quite dark. We can't see things. So we use sound instead to navigate and figure out where we are and make sure we don't crash into some ocean trenches or sea cliffs or that sort of thing.
Right, sounds like I need some of them. All right, I'll be back.
Is it too late to add 2 garlic breads to that? And the sodas, could I get 1 orange?
Okay, sorry, back. Hi.
How did you get into the...
Don't worry about that. So, turns out boats like ours use this really high-tech glass called fibre optics. And it kind of like senses what's around the boat and stuff like that.
Cool. Well, let's get some in here. Stop dilly-dallying.
That part sounded really complicated, so no.
What do you call it when light bends as it passes through glass? Reflection, refraction, or retention? It's refraction.
Happy National Science Week from Penguin School After 6.
Something else glass has been used for thousands of years is art. And that's what this next story is all about. Gladys went to meet a glass blower to find out how it can be moulded and shaped.
Here, in this 1,200 degree furnace, also known as a crucible, a transformation is taking place. This glowing syrupy gob is the early stages of a work of art. Emma is the glass artist behind these colourful and unusual creations, which all started out as sand.
We melt it at 1,000 degrees at least. So I think it's about 1,200 degrees at the jam factory our glass will melt at. And that's when it changes from being sand to a liquidy molten. The closest thing it is to, it's really like honey.
While it's in that runny, sticky state, glass can be poured, stretched, and moulded into all sorts of shapes, or even blown up like a balloon.
Glass blowing is just magic in action. It's using glass in its soft, molten form and using metal equipment like blowpipes, so like a straw basically made of metal. And because it's hollow and there's a hole inside, you can blow in one end and the glass on the other end can inflate.
Glass blowing is a technique that's been around for a really long time. It's thought that it was first discovered by Syrian craftsmen sometime in the 1st century BC. But the world's most famous glass blowers were from the island of Murano in Venice, where the technique was a closely guarded secret for centuries. Hey guys! Now it's something anyone can learn, including me.
All right, Gladys, blow please.
This is all possible because of the unique scientific properties of glass.
Stop. Wonderful. You can see that really inflated, didn't it?
Glass is something called an amorphous solid, which means its atoms aren't arranged in a perfect pattern like most solids. Instead, they're a little bit random, kind of like a liquid. Amorphous solids don't have an exact melting point where they snap from solid to liquid and back again, which means you can keep them in this gooey, sticky honey state and keep reworking the shape. Once she's finished shaping the glass, Emma has to leave it in a kiln overnight so it can cool down really slowly.
So the atoms of the glass are flying around when it's in a really hot state, and when it cools down they connect together, and if that happens too quickly they don't connect very well, and that's when there's stress in the glass and it can crack and shatter and explode. So we want to avoid that.
Emma says she's a big fan of the science behind glass art.
So what I actually loved in school was science. So I think that it's very funny that I'm now a glass artist, because I find that art and glass blowing is a perfect mixture of psychology and science and chemistry. There's so many different techniques and different types of glass for different applications depending what you want to make. So glass, as you find out during Science Week, it's not just one thing. It's this umbrella term for all these different aspects of what glass is and has been and can be. And glass for art is just one of those.
I've got an idea. I want you to think of an invention that has brightened up our lives. Have you thought of it yet? Before electricity, the world was mostly lit by fire, in candles or oil lamps or gas lanterns. But in the 1800s, we discovered we could make light from electricity, and scientists imagined a new way of lighting our world, the light bulb. The basic idea is that electricity is sent through a thin material called a filament, which heats up and glows. It's all encased in a glass bulb, which protects the filament and lets the light shine through. Early inventions looked pretty similar to the way they look today, but they were either too dim, the filament didn't last long, or it cost too much money. All the while, an American inventor called Thomas Edison was working away, trying to come up with the perfect material. After thousands of different designs, he eventually settled on this one, with a bamboo filament. These days, it's usually made out of tungsten, but the design of the bulb is pretty much the same, and it's changed our world, letting people work, play and travel and discover it in the dark, all thanks to one bright idea.
Well, that's it for this BTN Science Week special. I hope you enjoyed it and learnt a lot more about glass. We'll be back next week with a regular episode, but you can stay up to date with the latest news on Newsbreak every weeknight. I'll catch you next week. Bye.